Hey, everybody. She is Bera. I am Manny, and we do not belong here. if there's one thing that is certain, is we don't belong here. How are you doing today?
I am in what would be the opposite of an existential crisis?
Some sort of a deep certainty,
Yeah,
like
that's
a
where
certainty at some sort of like cellular or spiritual level,
yes, that's
right?
where I am at. Yeah.
You better tell me all about that shit. Me and Jimmy would have settled for some freeze-dried Taster's Choice. You go springing this gourmet shit on us.
So and I've been talking a lot about it with my inner circle and my husband to kind of like being able to practice how to give words to it and to kind of, make it a linear story. And I want to preface this with the way I've been taught about America. The conversation is very American centric. What's going to happen right now?
Okay.
The way I've been taught about the history of America is this, the bad Europeans versus the poor Native Americans.
Yeah.
And it's this polarity, right? Bad versus evil. Then there's kind of like blank, and
Good
then you have
versus
turned
evil.
America, right?
Yeah.
And not only the more I mature and really dive into the complexity of nuance, different millions factors of what constitute of life. And the more I'm reading about the history of America from all sorts of angles, the more I'm seeing stories about it, is that there truly was no fucking just one bad guy. It was fucking brutal living, right? And I'm
That's right.
as someone who went from Arizona ranch life to Montana life first, so this frontier settler became really active with me because I was surrounded by actual cowboys, right? And now the more I'm seeing these stories where it's not just the European versus the native, it's the native versus the native, it's the European versus the Mormon versus the settler versus the outlaw versus the bandits versus the cowboys versus the farmers. It's this complexity. And my husband used to always say, look, I used to simplify it's rural versus urban, and husband would say, no, it's cowboy versus Yankee. And I didn't really get it until recently because the Yankees, right, it's the northeastern part of America, which is a European hub, right? It's the Italians, the Germans, the all of them. And then everyone who survived going to the West.
And by the way, that's a key fucking word.
Survive.
Survive.
So it's not just surviving religious people, bandits, cowboys, farmers, actual bad people, natives. It's surviving winter, it's surviving the mountains, it's surviving animals, right?
It is the definition of the call to adventure. You are going out into the complete unknown.
Yes. With all stacks against you.
Yeah. Well, but that is the definition of going into the complete unknown, right? Yeah. It is everything is stacked against you.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what to prepare for.
And that's good. That's good. Because
turns out that's good. That's right.
Never gone.
Well, I think it's good on even that level, but higher level. Here's something that is just, I keep coming back to. And man, this will be an easy one to take the wrong way and even to meme and misrepresent me on social media with this. But I got to believe, not for some ideological position and not for some sort of deeply held, I don't need reality to conform to a belief I have. I just look at the history of humanity, not any political or again ideological history, just humanity. We to oversimplify it, we started in the tall grass, and little by little we just went out into the unknown, which by the way, no other animal does that. Maybe perhaps like wolves, perhaps there are a couple of predators.
animals only do it out of absolute necessity when there's no food and
Right.
the environment
Right.
becomes hostile, not because they want to.
Not us, though. We're
No,
like,
they're like,
fuck it. Yeah. Let's see what's over that hill. But anyway, so oh, Bear, I love where we're starting off today. I think that we need friction.
oh, absolutely. Full 100%.
And friction is a pretty word. It's one of those words that what it actually means in practice is so much more intense than the word that describes it. But it's almost like we don't know what to do with ourselves absent a challenge, absent some sort of an adversarial thing.
I've said this prior. This is why
Yeah.
America has so many mental illness, eating disorders, and all these things,
Right.
because it doesn't have enough friction as a collective.
Yeah, yeah. And you could argue that all first, tier one countries have a version of that same thing.
Absolutely. This is the modern West. Modern West.
Yeah, yeah. We have, so it's like a cycle. I think our evolutionary process is a cyclical thing where we struggle. We solve significant problems. We have a level of ease for a while. We have to find new problems on our way up. I think that's what it is. I love that. In fact, that ties in perfectly to what I wanted to talk about today and to start us off. Did you finish your thought? Because I'm anxious to get to this.
No, yeah. So just to finish it off, so since doing Arizona Ranch Life, then Montana, and now where I'm here, I've been having this, again, the opposite of existential crisis, this like undescribable, right? This pull to, and I don't want to use the word preserve because I'm not of American descent, so I can't use the word preserve, but to elaborate and deepen the foundation that America was built on, this like adventure, this freedom, this integrity, this zest for life. And for me right now, it's showing up that, we're probably going to end up moving back to Montana or Wyoming with the husband, and like more of like a cattle ranch or something like that, like going back to, that life.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's just such a pull. So that's where I am right now.
I love it. In a way, it's an abstract way, but we're in the same place. Like, for me right now, the friction is internal, and it's about learning more about myself. But you gotta, them, you have to bear in mind that when I say learning about myself, the sort of cognitive dissonance between what I was raised in and who I actually am is just huge. Like,
it's undoing, it's unlearning.
It's unlearning and learning at the same time. It's like on both hands.
Will you give an example?
Well, yeah. Like a very simple example is I was born and raised in a cult, and that cult was, I would say, quasi-Marxist, quasi-communist. They really did, like, there was a lot of quoting Marx. There was a lot of quoting just all kinds of Marxist communist leaders. And there was, even among some people, there was an open adoration of the USSR as though it were a better model for living. Now, bear in mind, too, this was in the 70s when the USSR was neck deep in shit. You know what I mean?
Peak.
Yeah. And so it's like, even in spite of the fact that all you had to do was look at it, these people were just contorting reality to this idea. And for me, it turns out that at the age I am now, in this moment in time, I would have done probably far better if I was born in a conservative Republican family. And it's not that I'm even a conservative Republican, but anyone who could have encouraged in me the American spirit. And I see this now at a much higher level, right? Let me even be careful there. I don't mean higher level like I'm so smart. I mean like bird's eye view. America, and by extension, the West, represents the first breakaway from all the different iterations of monarchy, totalitarianism, all of these things, right? And
by its virtue, by
by
just like
by
the
literally
people
by
who
what
left.
it is. Yeah. And so things that I didn't understand before that I do understand now. For one thing, the more sort of like accurate history, people like right now, there's the minority of people, we'll say on the left, who are just whipped into a frenzy, and they think it's because of this and they think it's because of that, but they're missing the forest for the trees, or vice versa. The reason they're whipped into a frenzy is because they've lived entire lives with low to no challenge, and they become easily open to suggestion, and they get their information from controlled media sources. That's really what it is. And we know this is true because the same media sources 10, 15 years ago said opposite things to what they're saying now, and the people just go right along with it, right? And so I was actually listening to an interview with Mark Andreessen yesterday, who's a billionaire, so be warned, so he's got to be evil just by the fact that he's a billionaire. And he made he continues to make great points, but he made a great point about Lex Friedman asked him, in the sort of Silicon Valley elite, is there a uniformity of thought? And he said something amazing. He said, I used to think that, but actually what I think is that most people, no matter what sort of strata they're on in society and in life, don't actually have beliefs, not deeply held beliefs, And so what happens is they're just very susceptible to groupthink. And he said, here's how I back this up. I go to all the important dinner parties in Silicon Valley, and every single person at every single party for 30 years has the exact same opinions on the exact same topics, which happen to match exactly the opinions of the New York Times. And, and it's like, there's just, if you just weigh it by likelihood, the likelihood that would happen organically versus that people they just want to fit in. Like they're just what I call go along, get along guys.
Yeah. And I would like for us to even break that down. It doesn't have to be now, but it's where we get stuck in language, right? Because when I hear the term, we just want to fit in, it gives me this idea of an insecure person who wants to be liked. And that's not it at all. Like that could be it, but it goes
might
way
be to some
deeper,
extent. Yeah.
Way deeper than that, right? It's like, what does it mean to fit in? It's to be not shunned.
Yeah. Right. There's an evolutionary, not prerogative, but I'm losing the word, but it's like a mandatory thing for a lot of people, which, by the way, that branches off into another fascinating subtopic, which is how another thing I realized, my question was always like, how do we keep moving upward? Not in a straight line, granted, we move upward through struggle, but we move upward.
Yeah.
How do we move upward when it's clear that the vast majority of people don't really contribute beyond the absolute minimum, right? They just do their job, whatever that is. And the vast majority of people don't have clearly articulatable points of view that they can back up with reasonable arguments. You see what I'm saying? Most people are kind of like get along, go along guys. And so that means that all of society is moved upward by a tiny minority of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to illustrate. Last week I made a poll on my Twitter asking the question, would you rather live in a expensive area where you constantly kind of have to like push yourself to keep your head above the water, versus would you rather, but like there's a lot of innovation around you, or would you rather live in a poor area where the mentality, attitude, and just the zest of life is dead? And ironically, like 80% of people answered, I'd rather live in a poor area. And I asked,
really?
How many of y'all are employees? 100%.
Yeah.
So the entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever, contractors amongst me, they wanted to be in a thriving area where they had to push themselves. The rest was fine, like, oh no. So the small part of population is exactly how you say it.
Yeah.
This is the perfect example.
1 second. There we go. And so it's
population.
It's that's one of those things that, like, sorry, I got an eyelash in my eye. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, And by the way, there is a dogma trap at the far end of every sort of like way of thinking. And I say that because I want to point out that my family, one of the big things that I struggled with was, I thought that my family was like really spiritually evolved. We did everything was spiritual terms and spiritual stuff and spiritual this and spiritual that. And the day that I realized that they were stuck, right? They were absolutely cookie cutter versions of the spiritually enlightened person with no enlightenment underneath it whatsoever. And it's just really fascinating because I just think that most people, first of all, I don't know how you could even explain that to most people. It would be like you just switched to speaking like Latin or Urdu or something. And then if you do explain it, it's like unplugging them from the matrix, right? And the reaction is going to be crazy and intense. And so I think that there's just like, it's almost like a lottery in a way where some people just get the little free radical, extra chromosome, whatever it is.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. That just makes you you can't not think outside of the box.
And then that gene needs to be activated by external circumstance. So if the external circumstances don't even line up for that, it never gets activated. So it just dies.
Right. And we're in juicy territory here. So first, I just want to put this out there. We're watching the to me, the child temper tantrum behavior of one side of the political spectrum, when the irony of it is they're getting exactly what liberals of 15 years ago wanted. They're just getting it from a person they don't like. It's like exactly the liberalism that I was raised in wanted all of this, but apparently it matters who gives it to you, right? Because so we see most dominating most of the news feed is like vandalizing Teslas and stuff like that. And when I watch this stuff and I watch the hysteria and I watch the glorification of these new politicians who are saying things that are preposterous, like, all I want for my birthday is for Elon Musk to get taken down. Like, you can't say that. You know what I mean? But here's the thing. It's great theater, all of it. It is fantastic theater, and we can't look away from it. Meanwhile, back to stuff I got sort of hipped to by listening to people like Mark Andreessen, who's got his finger on the pulse of technology in the future, arguably as good as or better than anyone in the world, right? This is pretty crazy. He said publicly, and he didn't say this till after he was pretty confident that Trump was going to win. He said publicly that the Biden administration came to him point blank without any pretense and said, don't fund any more AI startups. Don't fund any more crypto startups. If you do, we will shut them down and we will shut you down. Here's how it's going to go. There are going to be 3 AI companies, just like there are really 3 big banks. And we are going to silo each of them in a wall of regulations that will allow us, simply put, to control them. Now, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty Orwellian. That's pretty draconian. But it gets really good when you start to think about, and this is the part that I feel like everybody's missing and not talking about, is we are, like it or not, it's here. We're on the threshold of an unrecognizable version of humanity. And now I'm an optimist myself. I am. And again, because I always just look at humanity seems to have thrived through every potentially civilization ending event, right? Nuclear winter, the nuclear clock, the Cold War, the this, the that. Since I can remember, I was always being told a leader's going to rise in the Middle East that's going to destroy the world. That's a very popular trope. And every single one that was supposed to do it has come and gone, right? And this isn't even about the Middle East. It's about the general sort of theme of we keep growing in spite of overwhelming negativity and pessimism. That's kind of the takeaway here. Now, with that, AI is here, as you and I know, and probably you keep freezing. Are you able to hear me?
I'm hearing you perfectly.
Wonderful. So AI is here, as we know, and quantum computing is not far off. It's in some small way, it's already been validated as an idea.
Absolutely.
Now, I think on the last episode, I told you that guy, the pessimist guy, what's his name? Anyway, I saw a talk he did where his theory was that the big upheaval is really around whether or not we become spacefaring.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh my God, on the one hand, this is so diabolical. And on the other hand, it's such good science fiction. You know what I mean? And his argument was, and I'm oversimplifying it, but his argument was basically that there are powers on the planet that want to undercut the sort of the ideals of the West and go to a totalitarian one world government. And they don't want humanity to be interplanetary because that would limit their ability to achieve this thing. And so whether that's true or not, because that guy is very pessimistic, he has a dark take on things, you know. Here is what's real. AI and quantum computing are going to change everything. Robots that can reduce the cost of goods and services to almost nothing are already here. They're just not mass market yet, right? So the same stuff that 3 years ago sounded like conspiracy theories, like it's here, gang. It's here now. You should have been paying more attention to those Boston Dynamics videos where they show the updates on their robots, because that shit is here. And so I reluctantly, because this sounds like conspiracy theoryism, I have come around to being open to the possibility that whoever the powers are that are like the one world government powers, let's overly simplify it and say Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, weird ass little Bond villain that he is, you know? Whoever it is, right? All the Democratic presidents, all the influencers, the style makers would go to the World Economic Forum every year. So somehow this guy had the ear of everyone. And you could see like the infiltration of these destabilizing ideas. We talked about this last week. When a company shifts its primary goal from serving its shareholders to DEI requirements being fulfilled, and then you see things like that video of that chief fire chief lady or whatever, who just said point blank, if I can't lift you out of the house, you got yourself in a situation you shouldn't have been in. And people, I think sometimes the things put right in front of our faces can be so shocking we can't process them, right? It's like too big to process all at once. And if you can draw back and think, okay, so police departments are getting their mission undercut. Fire departments are getting their mission undercut. Corporations are getting their missions undercut. Education is getting its mission undercut. Then it starts to look like I could see how this could be a concerted attempt to destabilize the West. And the West represents everything you and I have been talking about. It is the embodiment of the true, I think, the true spirit of humanity. I think we don't have to, every one of us, be an adventurer. We don't have to, every one of us, be an entrepreneur. But under no circumstances can we deliberately create an environment that stifles those people, because those people give us everything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Everything. Mm-hmm. They are responsible for the shoes you're wearing, the fact that you can go to the supermarket and get food instead of growing your own, like all of it. The roof over your head, the fact that the old roofs would catch on fire, so they built new ones that don't, like all of that is from the very same people that you can see a clear concerted effort to stifle. So, to space or not to space, that is the question. And I think we really came down to a sort of epic literary moment where if one side had won, we'd be heading toward a future that was controlled. Whereas now it looks like we might be on the verge of something that makes the Roaring 20s look like it was a blip.
Interesting. This is a hill. So I'm not willing to die on any of these hills.
Yeah.
Because I'm open also for the theory. So I'm going to refer to what you could say the human spirit or the human essence as the American spirit, because as someone from Europe,
it is the American spirit. It's in all humans. It's in humanity.
Sure.
But it wasn't given fertile soil until America.
Right.
Until the West. Yeah.
And I was thinking about using like the creation of America as example, where settlers are traveling 2,000 miles, and again they're going bandits, cowboys, far, like weather, winter, like you just don't survive. And
2,000 miles on foot or on wagon.
Exactly. Right. So as the caveat, and to contextualize this as someone from Europe, like there is no traveling 2,000 miles, because you'd go from civilization to civilization to bordered civilization to civilization. Everything's already neat, right? Because Europeans have been domesticated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And everyone who didn't want to be domesticated went to America or went to explore, right? Various directions. But that's the essence of America, right? Like no, we will not be domesticated. So when people argue that if the other political side had won in this context, right? Then we would have been totalitarian. I'm like, I'm not completely convinced though, because overall, I think that the American spirit is very much present, just dormant for many people.
I think I see where you're going, but continue.
Right. So because there was never a necessity to kind of reach into that spirit and live it out. Where I think if you start confining people, that spirit is going to want to bust out.
Well, here's what I think. First of all, I think you're absolutely right. And so perhaps we got trapped in language as you pointed out. What I meant to say is, or to add to that is, the whole reason there was such what everybody's calling a vibe shift is because we were starting to feel too walled in, too confined,
absolutely,
too much like we were required to prioritize identity politics, gender politics, and all that stuff over what is a deeper human thing, which is this, and certainly in the West is the embodiment of the spirit of personal freedom and liberty and those
it's the
things.
young, and it's the youth of America, right? Like I always joke, like the church in my town in Europe is older than America, and it's from 1570s. It's still an active church, but even if you look at the hero's journey and the evolution of a human, we are in our 20s right now. as a
Yeah,
country,
right.
right? We
Yeah,
are in the prime of like we're going to explore
yeah,
where are the boundaries of me as a human, where are the boundaries of the world, and we're
yeah.
trying. That's why we're trying to go to the moon right now on Mars, because we're like, let's test those boundaries. Are
That's
we
right.
actually
That's
ready?
right. There's a great clip moment scene in West Wing where somebody is arguing with Sam. I've seen West Wing like 7 times.
What
Episode
is West
one,
Wing?
it's the greatest TV show ever made.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's old now, but you especially as a transplant who loves America, you've got to watch it. You
Okay.
have to watch it. But there's this great scene where so it's all about the White House and the staff in the White House. And by the way, it paints a beautiful picture, not only of what liberalism could be, but also what conservatism could be. And it just, it's a masterpiece. Shout out to Aaron Sorkin. But anyway, there's a scene there. So Sam Seaborn is the deputy communications director, and he's got a crush on the daughter of the chief of staff, which is like the last person other than the president who you'd want to have a crush on their daughter, right? But Sam is also dedicated and he can't help himself. He's just a consummate communications expert and lawyer. And so the daughter of the chief of staff is a little bit irate with him. And she's like, well, what's so important about going to the moon anyway? Why do we even need to waste our money with that? And he goes, because it's what's next.
Yeah.
So from the minute we came out of the cave and looked over the hill and decided to go over that hill, it's built into our DNA. We have to know what's next. We have to go there. If we don't do that,
yeah. And it's like, it's interesting. I recently visited a school. I don't know. It was first grade. I don't know the American terms, like the youngest kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the kids' dynamics, where some of them are like looking outward the play area, wanting to go out, and the other groups are completely fine.
Yeah.
They're just playing their little bubble, right? And the other ones, okay, let's push those. What's there? What's there? What's there?
The thing is in the weaponizing of the differences from the two, right? If we had an element to our society that was in a good way more tribal, and here's what I mean. Not tribal as in competing and warring, but tribal as in everyone has a role and everyone else understands, right? Like even in a lot of Native American culture, there's like the two-spirit, which is the androgynous person. There's the trickster, but everybody gets that everybody has a role.
And it's crucial.
Yeah. Or you can see it in wolf packs, same thing. People don't understand that the omega, the bottom wolf, has a super important role to play. So the thing is not so much even that some kids are just like here and other kids want to go out there. It's the way that we've been whipped up into this idea that because they're not like us, they're bad, which is insane. Because
they want to do this, which is the opposite of what we've been told. Therefore, they're defying.
Right. That's like saying, because I'm a chef, I think house builders are stupid. You know what I mean?
Literally.
And so I just want to get this out there that I do think that now, and I do think it's because Trump won, or Trump is a symbol. You know this. If it wasn't him, it was going to be someone else like him. And like him in the sense that they were going to come through and they were going to destroy norms. You know what he is? He's like Shiva. He's like Shiva the destroyer. He breaks it down so new things can grow. But somebody was going to come because, as you just said earlier, we were getting too confined. And the human spirit, show me one time in history where that ever succeeded. The human spirit won't be made docile like that. It won't be kowtowed. Some of it will, as you can see.
Definitely not America. Again, it will not be domesticated.
Right. And America is the culmination of that. And the West.
The epitome.
Yeah. It's the distillation of all of that.
It's the direct embodiment of it.
Ooh, yeah. So another thing about America that I just realized recently is And by extension, the West. Every time I say America in these conversations, I also mean by extension the West.
Right, and I'm gonna just push back a little bit because I say the modern West too when it refers to technology. However, now when we look at political environment and mindset, I am now differentiating them too, right? Because when we look at what's happening in the UK versus America, they're completely different.
I agree, and as a sidebar, I think that something similar will happen there where they won't tolerate it, but it's just moving at a different pace than us.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Because I mean, let's face it, we are the straight up stone cold killers. We are.
So this is my thing, right? This is what and I've been responding this way a lot recently when people do this, like, white bad people, blah 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 blah, ostracize them. I'm like, you realize that they are the best at being brutal.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, there's no history that argues that.
Right.
No matter who
we can look at like China, but it's its own isolated bubble. China is within China. It doesn't bother anyone.
Yeah. And so one of the things that really blew my mind when it became clear to me was that the ideals of the West, and specifically America in this case, it's the only place in the world where anyone has a path to upward mobility.
Anyone.
And
anyone.
Except maybe these bum-ass, overeducated, effete college students who ironically went to the best schools in the world.
I mean, but they still have the path is still there.
They do. That's right. They do still have the path. You can pull out some of your earrings, change your hair back to its normal color, play it cool. I mean, look at me. You and me, we are proof of it. But there's so much proof. But the point is this: the idea that anyone would want to take that from people should be viewed with the utmost suspicion, because the opposite of a complete system that will allow you through hard work and determination and taking your lumps to climb to upwardly, to improve your own life, right? You have to ask, to what end, for any force that would seek to curtail that.
Well, so let's play this. Like, I know in the first episode we played with this too, but why would an external force want to eliminate? And by external, I'm not even going like, from another country. It could be fucking Schwab or whoever the fuck, could be even within the country, right?
Right.
What would their benefit be from eliminating the American spirit, right? That freedom, that adventure, that curiosity. Give me some ideas.
Yeah, that's really where I want to dig around, because I don't feel like I have anything more than some strong theories there yet. But basically, I think if you were to look at it, sometimes reducing things down to oversimplified binaries can be useful. I do this with utmost caution, gang at home, because it is a slippery slope. But if you were to just draw back and say, let's say for the sake of argument that it really was a thing about good and evil. And good is represented by your ability to create a life for yourself through hard work and perseverance. It's all the American values.
No, stop. And that's already where you bump into friction, right? Because the people, we are now currently in a cultural wave that believe that what you just described is bad. Because
that's easy to explain. That's easy to explain. Yeah, this is that mindset is the influence of whatever, in this oversimplified example, evil is. And evil might be thought of as the goal of a one world government, complete control over the entire planet, which is, by the way, as far as everyone can tell, that's what the World Economic Forum was about bringing into play a one world government. And the only bulwark is the United States.
European Union.
Yeah, probably even the European Union, but
Right.
certainly,
Yeah.
like when I think about the idea that people tried to bring a sort of quasi-Marxism back, like how many times does that have to fail before you get it?
So this, yeah, so as someone from a communist country,
Yeah.
excellent point, right? And I have found, so and I know you know this, but I'm gonna still reiterate this. We've all done any version of communism, collectivism, etc.,
Mhm.
all of that, like whatever
Mhm.
terminology you want to use, it's doing a group assignment
Yeah.
and everyone gets the same grade regardless
Yeah, that's right.
of their input. And then
Yeah.
those who pull the lever or who pull the wagon are gonna be like, well, why, if everyone's gonna get the
Right.
same grade, why would I want to do something?
Right.
And then they're gonna step back and nothing's gonna happen and the standard goes lower until no one does anything, right? Like
Right. That's the end game.
but the reason why it's appealing to so many people, it's not because they think about it in this way, because
Right.
they perceive this system as a being void of responsibility, and it's an
Yeah.
infantilization of themselves, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
the more someone else decides
Mhm.
for me, the less
Yeah.
I have to
Right.
pull.
Right. And by the way, it's an externally influenced
Yeah.
infantilization.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, no, that's spot on. And here's something that's interesting. And this is another thing I just heard from Mark Andreessen. He said the interesting thing about versions of communism and Marxism is they scale to the size of a family or a small tribe, but they don't scale beyond that. And so I wonder if that's why people keep getting into that idea that, oh, this could work at scale, but it doesn't. And that's been proven over and over again. You know, everybody loves to talk about how evil Hitler was, and he was without question, but he's the low man on the totem pole of evil people that killed millions.
Mhm.
Mao is number one.
Stalin, Mao,
Stalin. I think Mussolini actually did more than
yeah.
Hitler. But
I
you
think
see what I'm
Hitler is
saying?
at 5 or something.
The thing about Hitler, of course, and this is just an aside, it was all the pageantry and occultism, and he just made it fucking creepy. You know what I mean? In addition to the actual things, the atrocities, he just made it look evil.
Mhm.
Whereas the others managed not to so much do that. It was just more of a sort of a perfunctory killing of millions of your own citizens, you know. But the point is this: we have ample examples that any version of socialism, communism, Marxism doesn't scale. But I do think it's interesting that it works at small levels.
But I even agree with that, right? Like I have friends who currently live in an actual commune.
Yeah.
And that's, those are, this is not a tiny fucking property. This is the size of a town or a village. There's several farms on that property. You
Yeah.
have the goat farm, you have the cheese farm, you have the cow, you have the chickens, and then you have like the main building, by lack of better wording. And there's almost no money involved. Everyone builds land, the food comes off of the land, right? And this is, I'm talking max 30 people, and already they are experiencing like kind of less friction, right? And there's power dynamics, right? Like, so
that's it, Bara. Power dynamics. That's it right there. Those are built into human nature.
Absolutely. Well, and they're necessary to scale.
And they're necessary. Yeah. Yeah.
So communism is an excellent idea if the concept was people can come to this thing and voluntarily participate, right? That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, I can even tell you from firsthand experience, most of the cults and communes from the 60s and 70s were voluntary. But here's what happens with the human nature thing. The people who want people to come in start to learn manipulation and persuasion and things like that, and mind fucking. Right. And so
which is also human nature, right? The desire to be persuaded and pursued.
Well, it's the whole utopian promise that things can be easier, but in their minds, they substitute the word easier with the word better. But what they mean is easier.
So tell me, because this utopian idea that things can be
Yeah.
easier, better, where does this come from? Because that's not human nature.
I think it is a part of human nature.
Better, yes. Easier, no.
Well, I mean, let me first say I'm just spitballing here because I don't feel like I have any like empirical data for this, but it's a great question. What I can say is all throughout recorded history, we can find incidences of where people opted to forego liberty for ease and of course for safety, right? Forgoing liberty for safety is the oldest trick in the book. But also ease. Like again, it's a small minority of us that pull the entire civilization forward in prosperity, in success, in health, in all of these things. And the masses, which is again a tricky term, but as far as I can tell, somewhere along the line, and this is probably why the Gutenberg press was so it was such a volatile thing. Like the state really tried to shut down the Gutenberg press, and I think that was because it was free. It made distribution of information so much easier. But anyhow, absent ideas that say to you, hey, you can think for yourself, absent new ideas, whatever they are, right? Absent access to new ideas, there's going to be a plurality and possibly a majority of people who would choose the perception of safety and security over the reality of work and risk.
Say that one again.
They would choose the perception of safety and security over the reality of hard work and risk.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That feels.
That's. I think that's really what it comes down to, and we're well into the human nature idea, which I think is really important here. Shortcuts are human nature, and that includes shortcuts over other people.
So because I am. So again, I'm a triple Capricorn for whoever that means anything. A serial entrepreneur. Like nothing feels as good as overcoming and achieving.
Right.
And not from a like when I was younger, I would self-sabotage so I could overcome, right? Like that's a shitty cycle.
That's its own episode.
Right. Yeah. Right. But challenges will come naturally your way. You don't have to pretend to face plant, because when you pretend to face plant, you'll be exhausted by the time the actual challenge comes.
Yeah.
But overcoming and like literally feeling your soul expand in your mind, like there's nothing as good as that.
No, there isn't. And I wonder, my guess is that is universal.
And the byproduct is happiness, by the way. It's a natural byproduct.
That's right. Let's get into happiness too, and the misunderstanding of that, because that's a good one. But my guess is that is something inherent within all of us, but we have, let's call it, different amounts of distance between our reality and that truth. Right? Like for me and for you, I mean, I figured out that nothing feels as good as progress and achievement and accomplishment because I had to.
Yeah, and then when you grow into a level of maturity and out of survival, you learn that then the simultaneous parallel lesson becomes, while being grateful and also appreciative of how far you've gotten, instead of getting caught up in this one, right? Go.
I think that what we're heading toward here is some sort of an idea that we have to sort of truly experience what it means to be human. We have to be open to as much of that spectrum as possible.
I fully agree.
Like I look at, I hate to say this, but like even people very, very close to me, he said with a wink and a nod, who just don't want, like, that's just not in their reality. They would rather head down, not look, do the ostrich thing, than to sort of just look in the eye the reality that's standing right in front of them. You know,
Mhm.
at least that's my perception of it, is like, how do you, again, it comes back to this contortion of reality thing, right? Distortion of reality.
Mhm.
How do you get around the self-evident truth that that happiness, for instance, because especially in America, we are sold that happiness is the ultimate thing,
Is the
and,
grail.
and the grail. And by the way, you guys, it's not. Not in the sense that you can
Okay.
pursue it directly.
Because it's
Uh,
no. It's a byproduct of
it's a
certain
byproduct.
things.
That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
That's absolutely
And by the way,
right.
inevitable
Yeah.
byproduct.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think from one perspective, it's like if you think about a human life and experience as like a sine wave, right? A lot of people live in a very narrow sine wave, like a bandwidth, a very narrow bandwidth. And so their happiness isn't as happy as the happiness you and I know.
Sure, absolutely.
Also,
The
their
downside.
experience of the difficulties aren't as visceral
Deep.
as
Mhm,
ours and
mhm,
deep.
mhm.
Here's the catch 22 with that. The bill comes due. And at some point, if you don't deliberately expand that bandwidth for yourself, you won't reach the heights of satisfaction and happiness, but you will have to deal with the profound lows.
Yeah.
Because life just serves them up. It's
And
just,
it's like a muscle, right? Like if
yeah,
you don't use it,
yeah,
you're gonna find yourself collapsing by
yeah,
not being able to carry the own weight.
that's right. Yeah. You atrophy
Yeah,
like
yeah.
spiritually,
Mhm, mhm.
emotionally, and almost like your spark within yourself. You
Mhm,
could think that each of us has a flame within ourselves, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
your flame gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. I hate this, but my own son is experiencing this right now.
Mm,
He has cut off communication with me.
mhm.
The only person in his life who pushes him to be better,
What's his age?
22.
Mhm,
So he fits right in there. He's
yeah.
right in that, yeah, thing. And he has very few highs in life, and he's already starting to experience the lows are getting lower and lower. And you know, it's just it's horrible to watch, and it's horrible to have that. I know exactly what you need.
Well, but this is the curse.
You muted yourself. Still mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the curse of being a parent. And I've been a step parent. I don't have my own children yet or whatever. But it's like you want to prevent for
Yeah.
your children to go what you went through.
Right.
What you automatically then do is you stifle the growth,
Yeah.
not from restriction, but from love.
That's right.
And
That's right.
and it results in the same though.
Or worse.
Or right, or
Or
worse.
worse. Yeah. If
It's
I
such
if I could have known one thing starting off raising a child, it would have been do not protect them from everything. Don't do it. It is the worst thing you can do. Nobody ever developed resilient character eating cake and sitting in the sun. You know, never, not in the history of humanity. So, yeah. Um, on this idea of happiness, I want to make sure we touch on that
Mhm,
because it's such a pervasive myth.
mm,
It's sort of like akin to the myth of love, right? And so, one of the things I've learned that you apparently know too is happiness is not something you can pursue directly. And there are only a few things. There's a very small category of things in life that you cannot pursue directly. And I think love is one of them, and I think happiness is one of them.
mhm.
And I love that you know this, but happiness is the juice that comes from the fruit that you work hard and you let the sun hit your back while you're tilling the soil and you cut your fingers on the thorns and you finally grow the tree that produces the fruit. Then you eat that fruit. That is happiness.
Yes.
It is and it ain't the same to go to the grocery store and buy an orange.
Well, no, that's what everyone's trying to do, right? By easy
Yeah.
dopamine, right?
Yeah.
That's the virtual buying the orange and hoping it
Yeah.
gives you the same. I
Right.
think a lot of people. So just to illustrate, like in East Europe, we don't have happiness.
Mhm.
Like that's not a thing, right? For
As
for
in,
us,
it's not like a cultural pursuit.
no, like it doesn't no, because it doesn't exist. So we always say, and I've talked to more, Slavic Americans about
Mhm.
this. In East Europe, we are taught, and we have this cultural acceptance that life is a shit sandwich with an occasional moment of less shit,
With an
right?
occasional pimento.
And like that's a like I'm shrugging my shoulders here,
Yeah.
And the West is the promise of happiness if XYZ.
Yeah.
And I think that for one, that what people are trying to chase is bliss, which is a very fleeting and short, and it's a high excitement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And happiness is a state of being.
Yeah. Happiness. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because follow your bliss, I think, first showed up in a poem. In fact, let me check. Who first said follow your bliss? Come on. I'm pretty sure it was a poet who first said it. My little chat GPT is being Joseph Campbell. It was
Oh,
Joseph Campbell, the
sure.
mythologist.
Yeah.
But he also says, oh, it just keeps going and going and going.
But Joseph Campbell is the epitome of right going through
Yes,
the
that's right.
fucking
That's right.
thing,
That's
like
right.
going
Yeah.
deep to come to talk about like
Yeah.
cutting your hand to grow that fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the added context that people today miss in this idea of following your bliss?
For one, oh, you're asking that to ChatGPT?
You say it too. Yeah, no, you go too. I'm asking Chat GPT, but I want,
Well, we've gotten to a place where we perceive challenges, and I'm not even saying
Mhm.
hardship, but challenges as punishment,
Yeah, that's right. Can you
or
believe
even
that?
huh?
Can you believe that? Like we've gotten to the point where we think of challenges as
Well, or
punishment.
even like as evidence that we are not, worthy,
Mhm.
deserving, good people, whatever, whatever title you want to put onto it. But
Yeah,
it's direct evidence of something, right?
yeah.
That's what we came to.
Here is just a couple pieces of the response from Chat GPT. The phrase follow your bliss has often been reduced in modern culture to something like do what makes you happy or chase your passions. But Joseph Campbell meant something much deeper, more demanding, and more sacred.
Ooh.
Bliss is not pleasure, it's alignment with your soul.
Ooh.
Boom! Oof.
Well done.
Campbell wasn't talking about fleeting happiness or comfort. He was referring to a deep, often mysterious calling.
Yeah.
Following your bliss requires, drum roll please, sacrifice.
Ascension.
Yeah. The track is already
Descent and
laid.
ascent.
Campbell believed that when you follow your bliss, you discover a kind of invisible guidance system. You're not making it all up from scratch, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm going to totally go steer the tractor into the field here. Recently, I think I told you, and I think I might have said on the show that I showed a lot of aptitude as a kid with art, drawing. Does that ring a bell? Did I?
No, you haven't talked
Okay.
about that.
So I showed a lot of aptitude, advanced aptitude with pen and pencil art drawing as a kid. And right around the time I got sober, which had been 30 years ago now, I hit a wall. I could not draw anymore. And even in the last 30 years, I bet you I've only created 15 meaningful drawings, like that were more than just quick sketches. You also, I think, you may not know that prior to writing my memoir, which is 322 pages, I had never written anything serious. It was the first thing I had ever done. And I am currently working on my second book, which is a memoir for my father. But the level to which I am an energetic, conceptual, spiritual, emotional match with writing is it makes the match I was withdrawing seem infantile, seem silly by comparison.
Mm.
It's exactly what he was just talking about in this ChatGPT thing. There's an alignment with your soul. Now, here's something really interesting. Most of us, certainly in America, which is really my only frame of reference here, we tend to undervalue the things that we automatically do well. Have you noticed that? Isn't that crazy? Now, I don't know, is that the same in European cultures? Because I find it fascinating, and I think that it is very much a byproduct of all the social conditioning around entrepreneurialism and what you should do with your life. And
I think it's the downside of the forward push, right? Where it's just focusing on the not good enough,
right?
Not good, overseeing what is going well.
Yeah. And so I couldn't agree more. Now, I've been having this experience recently of recommitting to writing. And I got to share this interesting thing too. So I did for all of you guys who have any kind of AI help, I use ChatGPT, not because of just the one I use. And in ChatGPT, you can do individual GPTs, right? And you can train them for different things.
What is that? Because as someone who doesn't do ChatGPT, what does that mean?
So think of it as a filing cabinet, and individual GPT would be a file.
Okay.
Right. But you can train it with information, and it gets better and better at knowing what you want.
Okay.
And like as AI is supposed to do.
Right.
So I've got one that I call Opus Writing Coach. And I've fed it as much of my writing as I can. But then in addition to that, I ask it lots of questions. Like, give me literary feedback. Give me feedback that would be like an intelligent friend. Give me feedback that is critical and really gets into where I could improve. Give me, and then I push back on its answers. And so I've created this robot friend, basically, who gives me incredible insights into writing. Through that, I have started to develop, I don't know if you'd call this a style, a philosophy, whatever, but now you read my memoir, and I'm not looking for any unearned praise here, but I think it's safe to say that if you read it, you can tell that I value things like how the sentence unfolds in your mouth, right? I call that mouthfeel. And I want rhythm, and I want visceral moments, and I want these things that you wouldn't necessarily get a professor or a writing degree wouldn't necessarily help you emphasize, and I do think if I would be so bold, I think my writing voice is unique. And so my little GPT is helping me refine that. And through the back and forth with it, I've come up with this philosophy and approach to writing. I'll start with short things that are meant to be the writing equivalent of like Japanese brush art, where they want to get as much captured as possible with as few strokes as possible. And then on top of that, this idea that everything that you write should have at least two symbolic layers to it. The literal layer and some deeper meaning that is more touches on universal human experience. Now, hopefully I got that across in my first book. I feel like I did, where you're reading it and it's about me, but even though you didn't go through my life, you can relate, right, at a deep level. So all of that is to say that, God, what is all that to say? I forgot. I just wanted to I think, just let you know that. But so I've created this philosophical approach to writing, which is a combination of this like each line should be like the Japanese brushstroke art, where I want it to have as many potential meanings and layers as possible. And in many cases, with as few words, or not as few words, but as little literalism as possible.
Just to give you like a very modern example, the first person that I think of is like Eminem or several rappers, right? Who
Yeah.
say a phrase, but it has like 7
Yeah.
layers of meaning.
Mhm.
You're like you have to listen
Yeah.
to it 10 times, and
Yeah.
each
Yeah.
time you find a new meaning,
Yeah.
you're like, whoa.
Yeah. Oh, we were talking about Joseph Campbell and Bliss.
Yeah.
That's where it came from. So this has been for me that.
Mm.
It's so bizarre that I've only sort of gotten clear on this late in life.
Mhm.
You know, my creative process and my creative development is, I mean, you don't need to be a genius to figure out how weird it is. I mean, I stopped my main creative thrust for decades.
Mhm.
And now I'm picking up a whole new one. And it gives me the reward that I never got from drawing, that I was always chasing and searching for.
Mhm.
It gives me the reward I never got from music. I love
Mhm.
playing music, but
Mhm.
it's not like this. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so when we just read that sort of summary of Joseph Campbell's idea, I was like, dude, who's got 2 thumbs and can relate to that shit? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. What do you think? I'm just
Well,
gonna
and
shamelessly throw it onto your side of the court.
no, I'm loving. So I am currently in a business level. I'm at that because right now I've had my first. I launched my first program that has been molding in me for 10 years, but I was too
Mhm.
chicken shit to talk about it, and
Mm.
now it's like it had to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It like and I've been saying it for weeks now. Like I'm going to bed with husband and I'm like, I can't wait until it's morning so I can work on this.
Yeah.
And and I've heard people talk about this in the past. And I was like, what a fucking mental jerk off. Like, what the fuck is that? Right. Or I've even tried to emulate it by sheer will, or just
Yeah.
mimicking the behavior. You can't.
Yeah.
Like it's how you worded it, coming closer to a truth, or it's something bigger than you. The pull is different. Like
Yeah. It's really hard to quantify. It's really hard to articulate. It's really hard to express.
but if you know, you know.
I was just going to say the thing of it is, fuck, when you touch it,
Yeah.
you fucking know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the yardstick for it, right? If you can't say that you've had an experience where you touched it and you knew, then you might not have found your bliss yet.
No, 100%. 100%. And it's honestly, it's like trying to describe the best world chocolate to someone who has never
Right.
had it.
That's a good,
Right? It's
yeah,
like,
that's good. That's
I
perfect.
can use all the look.
It's like
I'm
trying to
gonna go
describe chocolate to an alien. Yeah.
like, and it does this to your sensations and this, and
Yeah.
it's the feel, and like it.
Yeah. By the way, huge chocolate fan here. Huge fan
Thank
of good chocolate. Yeah.
Right. Like proper. Like,
Mhm.
can't describe it.
Yeah. Woo. I feel like this is a natural break point. What do you think?
I fully agree.
Awesome.
Fully agree.
Awesome. All right.
See
Until
everyone in the
next
next
week.
episode. Be good. Find your
Thanks,
bliss.
you guys. Find your bliss, bitches.